till come the afternoon, we'll start to see cloud and perhaps some outbreaks of rain spilling in from the east into East Anglia and the far southeast. The possibility of a little bit of mist on the North Sea coast as well, and certainly it will be chilly here again, 11, 12 degrees at best. Some of the coastal resorts only 9 or 10 Celsius, whereas further west again 16, 17 degrees. Western Scotland again likely to see the highest temperatures, although not quite as high as today. Then that cloud and outbreaks of rain start to spill further westwards as we go through the evening time, and could turn into quite a wet start to Friday across parts of northern England, and some heavy showers likely to come into the southeast too. And that's how we go into Friday. So a very different day for England and Wales, whereas Scotland and Northern Ireland still largely fine and sunny, still that easterly breeze as well. But without the sunshine, stuck under this rainy zone through Lincolnshire, Norfolk, into parts of Yorkshire, Lancashire. It won't feel very pleasant at all, 10 or 11 Celsius. Further south, some brighter spells, but again, western Scotland likely to be warmest.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's me again, Loza, in for Nigel for one night only, again. This evening, we have for you an exclusive story on a report that claims to discredit the body that approves COVID vaccines. The eco-fascists are trying to ruin our weekend again, and we'll have one of them on later to talk about it. And I'll discuss the cancelling of the late, great P.G. Wodehouse. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening. The top stories on GB News tonight. MSP Colin Beattie has resigned as SNP Treasurer and from Holyrood's Public Audit Committee until a police investigation is concluded. It comes after he was arrested in connection with a police investigation into the party's finances. Mr Beattie is the second person to have been questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 given in donations and set aside for an independence referendum has been used. First Minister of Scotland Humza Yousaf has tweeted following the resignation, offering his thanks and adding the decision has come in the best interests of the party. The Prime Minister has urged unionists in Northern Ireland to return to Stormont, saying restoring devolved institutions is the best way forward. Rishi Sunak was speaking alongside other world leaders in Belfast to mark 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. Former US President Bill Clinton is reported to have said, "It's time to get this show on the road." Now, a Home Office lawyer has said the government's estimating and preparing for 56,000 people to arrive in the UK by small boats this year. That's up from nearly 46,000 in 2022. The Home Office is currently accommodating almost 110,000 asylum seekers, almost 50,000 of whom are in hotels at a daily cost of £6 million. If the estimate is accurate, that'll take the total number of migrants supported by the taxpayer to between 120 and 140,000 people. Labour is accusing the government of denying justice to the victims of infected blood. Between 1970 and 1991, thousands of people were infected with HIV and hepatitis after being given contaminated blood products. In an interim report, the chair of the inquiry recommended that reparations should be extended to include bereaved parents and children. And Cabinet Office Minister Jeremy Quinn told the Commons the government is considering the recommendations. The Conservative MP Sir Robert Buckland has urged the protest group Just Stop Oil not to disrupt the upcoming London Marathon. It comes after members of the group interrupted play at the World Snooker Championships in Sheffield this week by spreading orange powder across one of the tables in play and delaying the start of the Grand National by going onto the track. Sir Robert told Gloria Di Piero disruption is absolutely unnecessary.
Can't think of anything worse than a protester disrupting what is often charitable fundraising. So, my plea to them is, look, think again, please, guys. Make your point, but don't make it in a way that upsets and disrupts much-loved events like the marathon.
And lastly, the supermarket giant Tesco says it plans to appeal after Lidl won a High Court battle over branding. Lidl argued Tesco's use of a yellow circle on its club card was an infringement of their main store logo. A judge found in favour of Lidl, agreeing it was a violation of their trademark rights and copyright. That's it from GB News. I'll be back in an hour. This is Britain's News Channel.
Conspiracy theorists, or conspiracy factualists, as I like to call them, seeing as most of their predictions have an uncanny habit of coming true, have a phrase about how the regime are going to go about the slow business of holding their hands up to the catastrophic failed public health experiment of the last 3 years. They call it a limited hangout. CIA spy jargon for when the veil of secrecy is shredded, the government is caught with its pants down and the phony cover story can no longer be relied upon to misinform the public. Governments resort to admitting, sometimes even volunteering, some of the truth while still managing to withhold key and damaging facts, hoping that the public is so intrigued by this new information that they fail to pursue the old matter to its conclusion. Now, the sceptical side of the COVID argument seems to be split fairly evenly between two groups. The cock-ups, who maintain that the whole sorry affair was a giant cock-up from the start, believing that these pesky politicians with their tiny IQs would struggle to organise the opening of an envelope, and the conspiracy theorists, who believe that the whole sorry affair is the machination of globalist elites who have alleged to have cooked up COVID in a Chinese lab to necessitate a vaccine which could then be used to turn in turn to bring in vaccine passports, swiftly followed by digital IDs, thus ending freedom as we know it and turning us all into battery-farmed useless eaters. Grateful for our free plate of gruel 3 times a day, never to see a Mediterranean sunset ever again, or indeed ever. I was interested, therefore, to read the report published today by Perseus, compiled by a multidisciplinary team of experts from various fields, including medicine, safety management and pharmaceutical regulation. It doesn't really matter which camp, cock-up or conspiracy theory one falls into. This is titled Safe and Effective? ? The report has in its sights the much-maligned MHRA, tasked with ensuring the safety and efficacy of medications used in the UK. The report is brutal, and if indeed it is, as many will suspect, part of a limited hangout, it certainly lets a lot hang out, going further than before in shredding the veil of secrecy and highlighting the reckless idiocy of our besieged health regulator. It concludes that the MHRA has failed in its duty to protect the public from harm. It states that the MHRA did not require the mRNA alchemists to demonstrate their concoction's long-term safety. It failed to act promptly on widespread reports of adverse reactions to these so-called vaccines, having labelled the mRNA gene therapies vaccines in order to fulfil lower regulatory requirements in the first place. It failed to address the problems with manufacturing, quality and control, leading to the now famous batch quality problems that so many of the vaccine injured associate with their particular post-jab suffering. And it did not act on the grave concerns raised about the quietly withdrawn Oxford AstraZeneca potion. Do you remember that one? The one which brought the vaccine-passported Wimbledon tennis to its feet in worship of the vaccine's creator. A potion which has, in some cases, left in its wake blood clots, heart inflammation, neurological conditions, immune downgrading and menstrual disorders, among hundreds of other side effects. It calls, the report, for the immediate cessation of all of these so-called vaccines until a thorough, independent investigation takes place, and yet again, us conspiracy factualists are proved right for the 100th bleeping time. It will take many years for society to come to terms with the evil meted out on us as quacks or crooks, depending on which side of the cock-up conspiracy argument you fall on, fumbled in the dark for a miracle cure for the COVID cold. People are still reeling, and hindsight is not as sharp as someday it will surely become, as this limited hangout becomes rather more permanent. But I raise this as there are pressing lessons to be learned from the COVID times that can be used wisely today. The same models, the same rushed solutions which led to the COVID catastrophe are being used by the same bad actors and the same fearmongers to push another hoax, the so-called climate emergency. Fairy tale horror stories of what is to come if we don't go for net zero carbon this time instead of net zero COVID. The fearful and controlling among us, envious of our freedom and satisfaction in life, will use exactly the same strategies as they did with COVID to leech away our liberty by the climate hoax. So, as I said, it doesn't matter which side of the argument one is on. If we want any semblance of a return to a good life, it is incumbent on us to remember those disastrous times, learn from them, and swear never, ever again. With me is the author of this report, Hedley Rees, Managing Director of Pharmaflow Limited and author of the Perseus report. Hedley, why did you write the report? First of all, can I just say, it struck me that it felt like the MHRA just sort of wandered away from COVID after the disaster of the last couple of years.
Yes, they did. It wasn't just me that wrote the report. It's a very powerful collection of individuals with specific skills around the whole life cycle of medicines and drug development. But I've been calling out the industry for more than 10 years, the industry business model where they have outsourced all the physical activities required to manufacture and develop and market drugs. So the big pharma is not big anymore. It just patents molecules and then sells the drugs. But the big piece in the middle, the vital piece, is in the hands of contractors. So what's been happening is there's been less and less drugs coming to market over the last 30 years. Principally because if you haven't got contractors with skin in the game, you can't actually control it in the way that you'd want to. So in my estimation, these gene therapies are the last chance saloon for Big Pharma. In 2017, Novartis launched a drug called Kymriah as a gene therapy for a rare blood cancer. They call it CAR-T cancers. $470,000 for one treatment, just not selling. Other gene therapies have come to market, some $1 million, 600,000. They're not selling, obviously.
Why is that? So obviously, as we move forward, I think one of the big problems that we have had during the COVID era is one size fits all. Everyone has to have a vaccine, depends on what age you are and all this sort of stuff. We want to move towards a system of personalised healthcare, don't we, really? Is that what we want?
Well, we can't, because we're still stuck with a supply chain which is manufacturers, chemical companies, biologics companies who make the drug. They supply them to the wholesale distributors, and they also sell them into the wholesale distributors. So from then on, they have nothing more to do with the drugs. So it's a one-size-fits-all system, and that's one of the big issues. They're trying to make it into a personalised system without changing any of the infrastructure or the way the industry works.
Were you surprised with what you found, and what was the most important part of the report for you?
I think the most. I think the report covers so many areas. You have to think very clearly about. If we look at the MHRA, they have three responsibilities, and this is written in stone in the Orange Guide. They have to evaluate and approve medicines. And to do that, any company has to submit what's known as an electronic common technical document. Now, there's three modules to that. There's the chemistry, manufacturing and controls, which is the supply chain element. So this is all the companies who are making different parts of the drug. They transfer it to other companies who do more. And the next module is the preclinical module, which is the safety, toxicology, drug metabolism.
Were these modules pursued as the emergency authorisation of the drugs were in? And also, can I ask you as a second question, do you have any faith in the MHRA?
Oh, absolutely not. No. Well, I'll answer the first question first. They ignored the chemistry, manufacturing and controls, and that is the key element, because what patients get in the arm is what's manufactured in the supply chain. So it doesn't matter what was done in the lab. They tested stuff in the lab and said that's safe, and that's all the testing they did. And I've known the MHRA since I co-chaired a conference in Cincinnati from 2010. FDA co-sponsored a conference with Xavier University and FDA, and we had a senior MHRA speaker every year, and they've all left to go into consultancy. The other thing people should bear in mind is that the MHRA in 1995 lost the skills to approve medicines because it all moved to the European Medicines Agency, which was in Canary Wharf in those days. So they lost all the staff who were capable of actually assessing drugs and approving them.
So they're not fit for purpose, and they don't have anyone who can work there. Great, thanks a lot. Also with me is Dr. Bharat Pankania, Senior Clinical Lecturer at University of Exeter Medical School. Good evening. What are your thoughts on what you're hearing, Doctor?
I sometimes wonder why you exist, to be honest with you, because a lot of these things that you spew out just send things that are worrisome to people, not verified, not factual. You just have your own agenda, and that's what I think. You are just spewing out your biased views. That's how I feel about you.
I wasn't asking what you felt about me. I was asking you what you felt about the discussion.
I feel about you, your statements, and the panelists that you brought together. I was brought up on this program right now, told I'm going to have a one-to-one conversation with you, and suddenly I find myself in a panel.
You find yourself in a what, sorry?
In a panel discussion.
You're not in a panel discussion, you're talking to me. Would you defend, what would you say about the findings of this report? Would you say that they're concerning and they should be looked at, or would you maintain your position that everyone else is a liar?
I haven't read that report. I knew nothing about that report. I wasn't brought on the program to talk about the report. Therefore, it's an ambush. How do I know? I haven't read it. I know nothing about it.
What do you think about the MHRA, Doctor?
It is a regulatory body. It is staffed by very competent, very able people who have served the nation well. They have done their job in being independent of government, and they do a great job in protecting the health, well-being of the nation with regards to which medicines are used, how they're used, and they also do the follow-up work. It is very unfortunate that further to Brexit, we are the MHRA is working on its own for the United Kingdom rather than being as part of the European Medicines Agency, because there is strength in numbers, strength in expertise. Having said all that, the MHRA is absolutely fit for purpose.
Are the COVID vaccines, so-called vaccines, safe, Doctor?
Well, with respect to the many, many millions of doses of the vaccines that have been administered, we've had a few unfortunate side effects and unfortunate maybe some vaccine-related deaths. But overall, on the balance of good versus harm, the good outweighs the harm by a large, large margin.
Thank you very, very much, Doctor.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right, an MHRA spokesman said no vaccine would be approved unless the expected high standards of safety, quality and effectiveness are met. We closely review the yellow card reports, not according to this report you don't, submitted to us alongside safety data from other sources from the UK and internationally. We also work closely with our public health partners to evaluate data, the safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccines. And wiped under the carpet. Up next, we will go live to livid residents who are protesting against 1,200 migrants being housed nearby. Don't go away.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We now go to Ray Addison in Bexhill for the migrant protest. What's happening, Ray?
Say again?
What's happening?
Oh, hello there. Hi there, Lawrence. Thanks for throwing to me. Yes, I'm here in the town, just outside the town hall in Bexhill Town Square, and of course the aim was to get 1,200 people to come out and protest here this evening. Unfortunately, that's mark has been missed somewhat. There's about 150 people here who are against the housing of asylum seekers in North Eye, and a smaller group way behind me who are actually in support of it. Now, the people who've been organising this event, they call themselves the Bexhill Elves, and of course they've been working behind the scenes to try to oppose the use of North Eye to house 1,200 mainly young male migrants who have come to this country. Now, Sheila Jacklin is from the campaign group No to North Eye. She joins me now. Sheila, come on in. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, are you disappointed by the turnout tonight?
I'm not actually. It's quite a windswept day in Bexhill, and this isn't bad at all. We might not have got the 1,200, but I think we've got more than 120 actually. I think there's more than that.
Now, some of the claims that have been made by people on social media is that the people who are here to demonstrate tonight are racist. How would you respond to that claim?
Sorry, it's quite funnical even. No, it's funny because they're not at all. I've lived in Norman's Bay for more than 30 years and, you know, raised a family there, and I've never come across racism until recently, and you can Google my name, you know, about that to do with the neighbours. But I've never ever come across racism, and I really object to people. These people are good people and they're being called racist just because they're white, you know, and they object to having a large asylum migrant centre. So it's shocking, and they're not racist.
So what are people concerned about? What do local residents tell you are their major concerns about the use of North Eye as a asylum accommodation?
Okay, well, it's the sheer numbers. It's 1,200 men, single men aged about 18 to 40, all in one place. I know families are worried because they're worried about the walking during the day, because these young men will be allowed to come in and out right up until 11 o'clock where they've got curfew. And so naturally families are concerned about just gangs of men roaming around.
Now, other councils have launched legal challenges against the government. Essex Council, we know, has started a legal challenge with the Home Office over plans to house asylum seekers at a former RAF base there. Are you guys going to start going down the legal route as well?
I think they probably are. I'm not sort of, you know, the organiser of any legal campaign. We're just part of the No to North Eye, you know, local residents who live in Little Common, North Eye itself, Norman's Bay. We're all concerned about it because it's going to impact us all, you see. And so I know what you're talking about, RAF Scampton and is it Basildon, Essex, that they're concerned about? You know, that they're going to have these large centres, and not just that, apparently there are going to be 20 around the country.
I think, yes, there could be a number. But so what about the solution then? Where should asylum seekers be housed? If not here in North Eye, where?
OK, well, you know, I've got a rather humorous response to that. My response is all those MPs who voted for war, Iraq war, Afghanistan war, you know, bombed Syria and Yemen, actually, let's do that one. I think that they should house a couple. You know, please, could you house a couple, you know, and take them in yourselves? Because most people did not want wars, and we need to stop war. And as you can see from my my little sort of poster here. End wars. We've got to stop the boats, and that's another thing you haven't asked me. I'm going to just say, why are they not seeking refuge before they get to the UK? There are plenty of safe havens around, around the world on their route from Afghanistan to here. So why is that? That's number one.
Sheila, unfortunately, we haven't got time for all the other reasons. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Mr. Merriman has said he wasn't able to be at the event tonight because he was required to be in Parliament. That certainly disappointed locals here, Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Ray. Yes, call everyone a racist who doesn't want 1,200 military-age males in an army barracks. Right, coming up after the break, we'll be joined by the Extinction Rebellion spokesperson about their upcoming joyous demonstrations across London this weekend.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Britain's news.
Welcome back. Now, a huge protest is set to take place in the capital over this weekend as Extinction Rebellion, our favourite friends, host a 4-day protest. Spectators set to watch the London Marathon are being urged to watch it from home or avoid busy areas such as Parliament Square this year over concerns about how much disruption the protest may cause. It is predicted around 30,000 supporters could be in Westminster on Sunday for the final stretch of the marathon. Extinction Rebellion, those jolly souls, say that the group has no intentions of disrupting the marathon and instead are providing an opportunity to connect with and support those running in the marathon for causes amplified by the climate crisis. Joining me now in the studio is spokesperson for Extinction Rebellion, Peter Knapp. Peter, why?
Why are we having the protest?
Yeah.
We haven't made enough progress, really. I mean, we know that the people in this building over here, that We've been telling them again and again and again that no new fossil fuel extraction is acceptable. The science says we need to stop fossil fuel extraction, but they still keep doing it. So we've got to be out there again saying the same message.
In order to save mankind?
Well, yeah, I mean...
But what about this? I mean, obviously, we do realise that the so-called climate crisis is killing people because this poor soul who couldn't face life anymore because he thought that there was no hope. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean...
Is there hope? Should people be killing themselves because the planet is a mess?
That's a really tragic case, and, I mean, I've been close to that myself. I think that the feelings of doomism around the climate crisis is a real problem, especially among people who feel alone. And this is the one thing that I think the protest is trying to address, is to bring people together. This is about being accessible and inclusive to as many people as we can, to avoid this.
But are you including Londoners? I mean, look, I know Jube's read this out. So, Terrorism Act 2000, as the use or threat of one or more of the actions listed below and where they're designed to influence government or an international governmental organisation or intimidate the public. The use of threat must also be for the purpose of advancing political, religious or racial or ideological cause. Serious violence against persons, serious damage to property, endangering a person's life. That happened, I think, at Grand National, I would suggest. Certainly endangered a horse's life and the rider as well. Creating a serious risk to health or safety of the public or a section of the public, and action designed to seriously interfere with or disrupt an electronic system. Would you say that the acts of Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil are acts of terrorism?
No, I don't recognise much of the language there in the sense of what we have planned. Instead, it's a much more... We've listened to the public, really. We are not going to disrupt anything.
The public haven't voted for you.
That's true, yeah.
So you may have listened to the public, but the public aren't going, you know what, I'm going to vote in Peter.
Yeah, that's true. But we do...
So are you holding us hostage like a terrorist?
No, we do listen to what the public say in interviews and in social media and in commentary. And we do think it's a really important step to, instead of a disruption that has been done, especially on Canning Town, where someone glued themselves to the top of a train, if you remember that.
Was he called Ethelred the Unready, or was that Torquil?
I don't remember his name, but that was an action which was regrettable. It didn't paint us in a good light at all.
Can we not just agree? See, this is what I'm interested in the climate thing. Do we agree? Both sides of the argument. We want a cleaner world. It is already a cleaner world, by the way. You know, the catalytic converter did a lot of that. But we all want a cleaner world. So if we start from the premise that we all want a cleaner world, we can then have a conversation. To me, this sort of direct action thing, and this is coming from someone who got involved in direct action, certainly over the COVID stuff, so, you know, I think there is a time and a place for it. But can we not begin the conversation by turning around and saying to each other, right, we both want a cleaner, better planet?
Absolutely.
Where do we start from? Because it seems like you're starting from a series of demands. We can have no fossil fuels. Whereas I would come from a position of saying, well, actually, GDP reduces pollution itself. What do you say to that?
Well, I wouldn't use GDP as a measure. I think that's really a kind of outdated system. But I would say that the way to engage the public is to bring them in terms of what we call citizens' assemblies. The idea of that is that we select a group of people like people would be for a jury, and they are brought in to deliberate on changes that need to be made. So it's not politicians dictating this is what we're going to do, and then all the public are going to go, right, OK, well, that's what's happening, like it was for issuing all the new oil and gas licences. What it should be done instead is a deliberation with the public. The public needs to be brought more on board with this, and this is what we call...
But do you think the public are going to be brought on board with it? Because, you know, I mean, Ethelred the Unready jumping on top of the snooker table with his oil-based orange powder is... all everyone just thinks is narcissist. That's what I thought. The minute I saw it, I thought, this is your moment in the sun, mate. You're a narcissist. I don't think that's engaging with the public. I don't think that's what you're describing as citizens' assembly, which sounds like a very good idea. To me, that sounds like you're just ruining snooker, which is, let's face it, the least global warming sport ever.
Yeah, sure.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean...
The group here is Just Stop Oil, and even though they're supporting, to some extent, the action over the weekend, it's predominantly not going to be a disruptive weekend.
So we're going to be able to cross the bridges, and if someone's in an ambulance, they'll be able to get hospital?
Absolutely, yeah.
OK, so it's just fun and games and dancing around with banners?
And it's engagement with the public. I mean...
Engagement's good. I've always... to be fair to you guys, when I've ever gone down to your protest, which I have done frequently, there's always someone there who's like, can we talk about it? Do you want to talk about it? And you can have a reasonable discussion. Unfortunately, you are talking to 8 people who are glued to a road. It's a bit annoying. Actually, very annoying.
Yeah.
And illegal.
Yeah, you've got to bring a small chair to have a chat with them. But
Well, yeah, but the police should rip them off the street, shouldn't they? It's obstructing the Queen's Highway.
Well, no, it isn't within their legal right, I think, to protest in that way. To rip them off the street would be illegal. But to have a reasoned conversation with people is exactly what this is all about. And it's not about speaking to people who are glued to roads. It's about speaking to people who are just going to be waiting for conversations with the public.
What's your favourite sports car?
Ooh, I used to have an old-style Mini Cooper, but I don't drive anymore.
Good for you. Well, you're doing your bit for the planet, Peter. Thank you so much for joining me. That was good fun. Coming up next, they've cancelled Roald Dahl, Shakespeare, and now the woke mob are editing out the great P.G. Wodehouse. We'll discuss in a fiery debate, no doubt, next. Bye.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Rehearsals are taking place. The Coronation quiche has been revealed, and Union flags and bunting now fill all the supermarkets. But at a time when the whole country can unite and celebrate our traditions and institutions, there is yet more protests being planned. This time not protesting oil or horse racing. This lot are protesting the monarchy itself. Republic, an anti-monarchist group, are planning to protest at the Coronation, shouting, "Not my king!" I hate to break it to you, chaps and chapesses, but he is. The leader of the group says that more than 1,350, very specific number of people, have pledged to protest at the coronation on May the 6th. Here to discuss this with me is royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliam. Richard, what on earth is going on and what have they got planned?
Well, what they've got planned, apparently, is to... Firstly, they're going to wear yellow.
Oh, well, very good. What does that mean?
What it means is...
Yugoslav Ukraini?
They want to be picked up by the media. They've got publicity in mind that's all about the fact that Republic actually, for a long time, have known that the only chance that they've got to make any real impression was when the Queen died, and with King Charles, obviously, in his 70s, Queen Camilla likewise, the last 50 years with ups and downs for both of them. And the facts are, that's, I think, behind it. They're hoping to get support, and they're also hoping to get international coverage. But the whole thing is basically a bit of a pity. I simply say this because it's a bit tasteless for them to protest, I feel, when it comes to, an abbey ceremony. You'd have felt it would have been more dignified to stay away. They couldn't stay away from the Maundy ceremony in York at that Minster.
But isn't the monarchy to blame for some of this? Because if Prince Charles is trying to out-wokeify himself, King Charles, sorry, is trying to be diverse, equitable and inclusive, coming from the world's most privileged, white privileged family on earth, if he panders to this woke mob, wouldn't he expect to be giggled at them as they try and drag him to the gallows?
No. Well, regarding the gallows, it's a very, very long time ago that they had a picture of the guillotine on their website. In fact, what King Charles would argue, I think, is, yes, he, of course, represents the national unity symbol. He represents a more diverse Britain. Heaven knows, it's 70 years since the last coronation. But what have they got to protest about? The answer is that the polls show that younger people are turning off the monarchy. But the interesting aspect of that, if you look at the 18 to 24-year group in the Ipsos Mori and the YouGov polls, what you see is they may be disillusioned with the monarchy. What isn't asked is what alternative they'd like. And it's that I think Republic have as a problem. You remember the 1999 referendum in Australia. That was the sort of thing where you didn't have younger people being naturally sceptical of institutions. As you say, the monarchy has traditional aspects that wouldn't appeal to everybody. But what you have got is a problem that Republic know that you'd have some superannuated party hack. Heaven knows you could choose, take your pick. I mean, The Guardian made an idiot of itself about over 20 years ago, where they were trying to pretend, firstly, that when the Queen Mother died, there wouldn't be that much interest apart from the old, and secondly, of course, the Golden Jubilee, would there be much interest? They were trying desperately to play it down. And who were the two most likely as head of state? Betty Boothroyd, a staunch monarchist, and Princess Anne. So it's very difficult for a Republic, and this is their big chance, they think, and wearing yellow with yellow placards with hashtag Not My King, and they think it'll appeal to a lot of international broadcasters and also get some local support.
Well, I'm sure they will get the international broadcasters, seeing as most of the broadcast media hates the King as well, and I don't think he's our King either. But what I would suggest is, wouldn't the monarchy be better suited to come out front-footed and say, we're the greatest institution in the world, we're most important for this country, ditch all the diversity, equity and inclusion rubbish, because you're never going to satisfy those people at all, and just come out and be patriotically front-footed for Britain? The monarchy has to represent all Britain. It's very nature. Well, it must. And also, I mean, when it comes to party politics, it's got to be above them. As a result, they couldn't make a statement like that without stirring up an absolute hornet's nest, even if they wanted to. It's not a statement, it's an action, it's a doing. The Queen did, didn't she? She was a doer. She kept I still don't know whether the Queen voted Brexit. I like to imagine that she did.
Oh, well, that was a terrific question mark as to what the royal family actually think. What did the Queen really think?
I think Charles is a Remainer.
But you don't know that for certain.
I put money on it.
No, but the Queen, this was very interesting. When the Queen asked a question about Brexit, this was taken by both sides to mean something, and the point is that you didn't know what the Queen thought, rather like the portraits, over 250 or some such. You never knew what she thought. You could imagine what she thought, but it's obviously growing up as she did in a totally different era, so you could hide your real views. We know what the King thinks as Prince of Wales, but he had to create his own job, otherwise it'd just be a ribbon-cutting exercise. Prince's Trust helping 1 million people, I mean... I love
the Prince's Trust, and there's lots of things that he's done which I think think are fab, and I love his love of architecture, and I think there's lots of things that he does which are fabulous. But I think he has this Achilles heel where he thinks that he can pander to the mob, the Republic, and he thinks that by trying to play to them with his diversity, equity and inclusion agenda, he'll actually end up being tripped up by them. Do you think that King Charles will be the last King of England?
Oh, definitely not. But firstly, we've had a monarchy as well, you know, back to 1100 years of the coronation of King Edgar, 973. Except
they didn't have Twitter at the Battle of Hastings, though, did they?
Oh, I don't know. Perhaps wasn't it the Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell, who invented Twitter? I joke because, of course, that's the one period in our history when we had a republic. What did they do?
Reversed it.
They melted down all the regalia. In fact, there's only a spoon and a couple of swords that predate that. And, I mean, there's no question. Republic, I don't think, are going to get very far. And they had these little polls. You were asking whether there'd be the monarchy after Charles or after William or William's successors. I think that William and his family will handle it superbly. But it does mean adaptability. And if you don't represent the whole country, and also you don't very carefully move above the party political arena, you really are laying yourself open to attacks that will not be pleasant. And the reparations issue, for example, that's one which is being very carefully handled, because the 3-year research into this as to precisely what the British monarchy's links with slavery were. The facts are, you would argue
but surely the British monarchy, we've got to ditch the idea of reparations full stop. Otherwise, I want some reparations from the Romans.
Well, you could ask, of course.
No, but should we ditch it?
No, it's an extraordinarily difficult topic. But remember, there are 15 nations in the Commonwealth where he's king. Some of them are in the Caribbean, and Barbados became a republic, to be sure, but they didn't ask the people.
Progress, though. Progress, all in the name of progress. Thank you so much for joining me. Amen, and God save the king. Right. It has been revealed that a newly reissued Jeeves and Wooster books will now carry trigger warnings. Oh, stop the madness. And books to remove language that could be offensive. Alexander Armstrong, the honorary president of UK's P.G. Wodehouse Society, has supported these changes, arguing that the novelist would never wish to upset his readers. Really. George Orwell once wrote, "Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street and building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. And that process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped." Sadly, it would appear that his dystopian idea is very much alive and kicking in our world today, like something from Fahrenheit 451. The woke mob are continuing to destroy our history and traditions, burning them down in front of our very eyes, all because someone might be a little hurt. Joining me to discuss whether our history and culture is worth saving and fighting for is commentator and reality TV star Narinder Kaur and Conservative MP for North East Somerset and GB News legend Jacob the Rees of the Mark. Good evening.
Good evening.
Narinder?
Yes?
What do you reckon?
I think it's just correct to take out liberal uses of the word N out of books, because it's just not appropriate.
Should we take the N-word out of the Mark Twain?
Take it out of everywhere, because...
Should everyone be banned from using the N-word?
Well, we are. It's illegal. It's actually illegal.
Hip-hop.
It's actually illegal, yes, but they come with a warning. So, because then you can't upset people, because I think it's more of a problem when you find that you're upset that the N-word should be kept in. I'd say that it's more offensive to keep it in than to offend an entire race.
Jacob,
I don't disagree with that at all, actually.
Right.
It's such an offensive word, and I agree with Alexander Armstrong that P.G. Wodehouse himself would not want to offend. I'm less convinced that taking out a travelling minstrel band is a clever thing to do, because that's something that happened in that time, and it's very funny. But I do think that a word, if there is a word that is particularly and uniquely offensive, then it's fair enough to take that word out.
But my question was, should that apply across to all aspects of society?
Well, I think that people should use language carefully. I think language is very powerful. There may be exceptions. There may be people who can use the word that we're discussing legitimately, but I'm clearly not one of them, and you're clearly not one of them.
And I'm not one of them, and also, I think
but
that
you could use the word coconut.
I can use the word coconut.
Why can you use the word coconut?
Because it's not racist.
But I can use the word papist. Without any equivocation, and I'm quite happy to be called a papist, actually. I think it's a rather nice term, and I'm a loyal supporter of the Holy Father. But it would be offensive for somebody who was anti the Catholic Church to go around calling people papists.
So it would be offensive for a Muslim to call you a papist, but it would be fine for myself to call you a papist?
I'm assuming you are a papist.
Well, I'm on my way, darling.
Excellent, I'm glad to hear it.
But I think it should be more about encouraging people instead of looking at this as, oh gosh, this is wokery and how dare we change literature. I think these authors are not alive now. We're doing them a favour because it makes it more accessible. It makes newer readers to these books. And it's not about, oh, we're sensitive, we would be so upset. It's more about making it accessible and making it right. You can't keep in offensive language because that's not what society is about now.
So I suppose one of the problems that I have with it, personally, is P.G. Wodehouse is a very, very talented man, and, you know, I've read his books to my children, and they flow beautifully off the tongue, and it's great. And I've read Mark Twain as well, because, you know, I did actually swap that word out, because it was, as you say, it's just too much.
There you go.
But what I'm saying is, yes, there needs to be a sense of moderation, but why is some half-baked sensitivity reader, I've seen what they've done to the Roald Dahl books, why would we entrust them with retabulating and creating new scansion to the greatest writers on earth?
Well, that's where I completely agree with you. I think what they did to Roald Dahl was stupid.
I don't. I think it was correct.
And changing Wodehouse fundamentally is a terrible idea. The reason he's so funny is the illusions that he has, his knowledge of English literature that he brings forward. What was it Evelyn Waugh said about criticising Wodehouse? He said it was like taking a spade to a souffle. And I think that rearranging Wodehouse is even worse. It's like taking whatever is worse than a shovel to a souffle.
But it's just a few words. It doesn't actually change the whole story.
It really does.
It's honestly. So the word "n" it changes the story.
No. I think
it doesn't change the story.
I'm afraid I think that particular word is an entire distraction because I think there's almost nobody who wants to keep that word.
Right.
And if you take the title of an Agatha Christie, that was changed years ago because that word is offensive. But I think going further than that, putting a trigger warning on P.G. Wodehouse, the only trigger warning Wodehouse should have on it is don't read in public places because you will laugh out loud and people will think you're dotty.
Well, no, but Jacob, you're making light of it. Like, even Charles Dickens changed his stories. He
was entitled to. It's his book.
Right, but then these authors are not alive. And had they been alive, we are doing them a favour.
You can't say that. You can't say
are
that.
making these. We are doing a favour.
You can't speak of the dead and tell them you're doing them a favour.
Okay, are you saying that any new author uses the word "n"? They can't use that word, can they?
The thing is, they do.
But I think we've all agreed on that particular word. We're now looking at the more general principle.
Yes.
These idiotic trigger warnings, which I think are desperately condescending. I tend to think that our viewers and the British public at large are quite clever enough to know that P.G. Wodehouse was living from the late 19th through to the final three-quarters of the 20th century. He was writing in a different time. His humour will be of that period. It is extremely funny. It lives on extraordinarily well. They don't need to be warned by some...
I'd want my children, if there was a P word in there, I'd want a trigger warning because I wouldn't want them to read that.
Public school boy or papist?
Public school boy.
Well, there are a lot of public school boys in there. They're mostly, I'm glad to say, Aldertonians. Wodehouse himself was at Dulwich.
Is there an element of there being that someone needs to mark? We've got the thick end of the thin end of the wedge, which is what we're talking about, and then you've got obviously the thick end of the wedge, which is the word that we don't want to be used.
Yeah.
So surely we should take the position that if it's not offensive and it's just part of you know, as Jacob said, a historical joke, it should remain in. And
it's fictional. It's not history.
Okay, well then who watches the?
We're not changing history.
Who censors the censors? Is what I'm sort of saying.
Well, actually, the public, and I'd say it's Roald Dahl books. I'm sorry, I think that they should have been changed as well. You can't call a horsey-faced woman a horsey-face and she's evil, because that character is actually a horrible woman.
Jacob and I both look a little quiet.
No.
Yeah, why can't you do that?
Because therefore, any woman with a horsey face is a horrible woman.
No, that's just ridiculous.
And then in the playground, you will call some child horsey. I know, I think it's not absurd.
This is absolutely absurd. People are allowed to say things that are not invariably flattering. You can't expect us all going around saying there was the most beautiful and elegant person who happened to be a witch who wanted to turn children into mice. If you're a witch who wants to turn somebody into mice, you're a bad person. And with a bit of luck, you're ugly, because that's quite a good warning. And I seem to remember...
No, you're saying ugly people are evil.
I seem to remember that the witches weren't ugly, because they managed to cover themselves up remarkably well.
No, but...
And you couldn't be sure, when you were out and about, if somebody was a witch or not, because they managed to meld in to society
No,
at large.
you're changing that now,
I'm not.
and I'm sorry, you're encouraging
I've listened to the books on audiobooks, and I've read them to my children, of whom I've got quite a number, so I know the Roald Dahl stories quite well.
I think they're horrible
Boggies and Bunce and Bean, one fat, one short, one mean, those horrible crooks.
So equal and next, but nonetheless equally mean. And on that bombshell on the window, we have Jacob, we have to finish. Well, that's all from me. Thank you, or to you, for not working for the first half of the show. Thank you for joining me this evening. Next up, it is the Reese of the Mog. Jacob, what do you got for us?
Oh, we've got lots of exciting things. First of all, why the Bank of England is a bit of a disaster and getting everything wrong. Why have we got this inflationary problem? Why isn't Bank thinking about it properly? And then after Prime Minister's questions today, what is wrong with poor old Keir Starmer? He was absolutely dire and almost cringeworthy. Even from an opposition point of view, they must have been so embarrassed as he was digging himself deeper and deeper into a hole.
That's what happens when you have zero principles and you're a flip-flopper for life.
And not much charisma.
I like him.
Oh, of course you do.
I like him.
Now, that sounds wonderful. Look forward to seeing you, Jacob. We'll have that up next, but first, the weather.
Good evening. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin, and it will be a bit of a chilly start tomorrow, but generally a fine and sunny day. Still that easterly breeze, making things feel fairly fresh on the east coast. High pressure sitting just to the north and around the high. That wind continuing to come in from the east. So brisk winds bringing a chilly feel to Scarborough and Cromer in particular, whereas further west we'll have, again, the winds a little lighter. For most places, though, it's a clear old night. Just some misty conditions maybe over the Pennines. It's going to stay dry pretty much everywhere. Temperatures will fall away, so feeling fresh down to 2 or 3 Celsius, even in some towns and cities, and a few pockets of frost are possible, particularly on high ground across Scotland and northern England. And the high ground of northern England could be a little bit misty and murky first thing tomorrow, but that should clear away. And then generally a lot of sunshine until come the afternoon, we'll start to see cloud and perhaps some outbreaks of rain spilling in from the east into East Anglia and the far southeast. The possibility of a little bit of mist on the North Sea coast as well, and certainly it will be chilly here again, 11, 12 degrees at best. Some of the coastal resorts only 9 or 10 Celsius, whereas further west again, 16, 17 degrees. Western Scotland again likely to see the highest temperatures, although not quite as high as today. Then that cloud and outbreaks of rain start to spill further westwards as we go through the evening time, and could turn into quite a wet start to Friday across parts of northern England, and some heavy showers likely to come into the southeast too. And that's how we go into Friday. So a very different day for England and Wales, whereas Scotland and Northern Ireland still largely fine and sunny, still that easterly breeze as well. But without the sunshine, stuck under this rainy zone through Lincolnshire, Norfolk, into parts of Yorkshire, Lancashire. It won't feel very pleasant at all, 10 or 11 Celsius. Further south, some brighter spells, but again, western Scotland likely to be warmest.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can